My name is Nicolas Namoradze. I'm Georgian by birth. I was born in Georgia and I grew up in Hungary. And for the past couple of years I've been living in New York and now Berlin. Seven, which is pretty late in my profession. Yes, I was 10 years old, and it was in Tbilisi, Georgia, the city where I was born. Well, I think I made the decision to pursue it very soon after starting. And it was the image of the great pianists and composers that I was so obsessed with at that early age that really gave me that kind of idea of what a life in music could be. Well, I have something of a rotation, usually, from time to time. But I'd say that the top two, in terms of the ones that have had the greatest influence on me and remain the most central parts of my repertoire, are Bach and Scriabin. Well, whenever I put together a program, I'm really looking to create a kind of dramatic narrative for the listener to follow along to, rather than just a selection of pieces I happen to like. So the program that I performed yesterday was a series of reflections on Bach. There were pairings of Bach works with works by other composers that related back to Bach in interesting ways, such as my own etudes, which are deeply influenced by Bach's approach to polyphonic writing at the keyboard, or the ornate embellishments that hark back to Baroque times from Chopin's Berceuse, and of course Liszt's Totentanz, which in many ways is influenced by archaic forms and Bach's approach, again, to keyboard writing. I think I'd probably choose the performance of the Brahms Second Concerto that I played in the finals of the Honors competition, not necessarily because it's what I think is my best performance, but simply because it was such a pivotal one in my career. It really established my international career, the win at the competition that night, so it seemed like a kind of turning point. So I'd say that would be the favorite. Yes, I believe so. I have a couple more coming, and this concert opened the season, so to say, for my performances in Switzerland. I like to say it would be the Thomaskirche in Leipzig, where Bach worked. I'm not sure the acoustics are the best there for a piano concert, but simply because of its symbolism, I'd love to play a recital of Bach there. Well, it's an absolutely charming space. It's a real joy to be here, and it's always nice to be reminded of the kind of setting in which a lot of this music was composed for. A lot of the music that we performed today was intended for the salon setting rather than the concert hall, and being able to connect with audiences on a more intimate level in venues such as this one is always an enormous pleasure. I think this is a really wonderful venture. I really think, generally speaking, that in the wake of this pandemic, these kinds of digital connections are more important than ever. The fact that we have these live-streamed concerts from the Classic showroom is really wonderful, and I think this is really nicely complemented by the platform, which can help us maintain that kind of proximity with one another and really ensures that we are able to take classical music into the 21st century. I'd say that for both, it's a completely internal thing. I don't think that happiness can be found in any external achievement or situation or anything. It is entirely a matter of perspective. And I like to think of the phrase that we talk about in mindfulness traditions a lot, that you cannot become happy, you can only be happy. And I think the fact that some people can be very happy with very little and some people can be very miserable with a lot says a lot about the fact that our internal sense of well-being has very little to do with the circumstances around us. So for me, both of these concepts are very much entirely internal and not dependent on what one seems to achieve externally in life. If I'm at home with no performance scheduled in the evening, I will get up and do most of my practice before lunch, in fact, maybe a little bit after lunch as well, but after lunch I usually begin working on my studies. At the moment I'm pursuing a postgraduate in neuropsychology, so the afternoons are usually dedicated to that. And after that I move on to some other work that I'm doing for some new digital platforms, creating some content. There will be more news about this soon, so stay tuned. And that really takes up my day. If I do have time, otherwise I will be composing. And usually when I'm not working on these various ventures that I am now, composition would be an important part of the day. And yes, that's usually how I'm organizing each day. Well, free time is a very precious commodity at the moment, one that I haven't come across for a long time, but I adore literature. I read avidly, and especially now I'm reading a lot in the field of my studies, in neuroscience and psychology, but I'm also a great film buff. I am a particular fanatic of East Asian cinema, and it's something that I keep returning to at different points in my life. There are many exciting things coming up. This month I have several concerts in Germany, at the Thüringer Bachwochen in Erfurt, I have a concert in Bonn, and so forth. And then in the States, in July I shall be playing several concerts, hopefully, provided that the pandemic situation will allow for these concerts to take place. And then in August, back in Europe, many festivals in Germany, in Poland, in Switzerland again. I'll be returning. I'll be performing at the Gstaad Menuhin Festival on the 28th of August. After that, I have Canada coming up, Georgia, Japan, a lot. So it's an exciting season to look forward to, provided that the pandemic will allow for it, that we're really getting out of this crisis as soon as possible. Looking forward to some travels today, and really looking forward to savoring the last few hours I have on this beautiful estate, which is really just a feast for the eyes. It's really so beautiful everywhere you look. Well, I'd say that each stage of my career has had different challenges. One was winning a major competition, and then the next was maintaining that kind of momentum in the next seasons, and so on and so forth. So those are more clearly defined challenges. But I'd say at the moment, looking back on what these years have been like, I think the most important thing to look out for, and one thing that I've always had clearly in my mind, is to maintain a sense of centeredness. It's very easy to get lost in the whirlwind of lights and hotels and concerts and orchestras and chamber music and all that, and it can feel like a tornado in which one is caught and spinning all the time. What is really important to find that sense of stillness and that stable core that one takes with oneself wherever one goes. And I think that sense of stability and centeredness is what allows one to communicate, even in this very hectic environment, with that sense of clarity and integrity at all times. And that's something that is constantly something that I'm really looking out for and working on. And I'd say that's really, in a sense, my objective as I move through this kind of very unusual life.